My name's Steve Regan, and today I'm going to talk to you about evaluation of sources and evidence. I'm also going to introduce you to some tools like Occam's razor. I'm going to talk about bias, and I'm also going to talk about some of the fallacies that you may come across when you're debating or writing an academic report. In order to do this, we're going to look at the interesting case of a UFO sighting in West Lothian in 1979 on the 9th of November, involving a man called Bob Taylor, who claims to have sighted a UFO, but not only that, the UFO supposedly attacked him. What I want you to do is pause the video for a while and have a look at this so-called case file. This is your first source of evidence. Basically, you've got to say to yourself, what was this produced for? And this was produced for tourism in my mind. It's written by the West Lothian Council. You can see that they allude to a plaque in the bottom of the collage there, and there's snippets of information from the newspaper and various illustrations of the markings that the alien craft left behind and drawings of the alien, also Mr. Taylor himself. It's written like it would have been done on a typewriter, and as you look at it, it's got the depiction of a top secret file. So once you've had a look at this, then what I want you to do is watch the following video clip.
With a tale of mysterious otherworldly sightings and a criminal investigation. No cat or metal thing.
40 years ago, in broad daylight, something extraordinary happened here in West Lothian in Scotland. Our reports made by police detectives and forensic scientists evidence of a terrifying extraterrestrial encounter.
To this day, what's become known as the Decalogue Woods incident is still the only reported UFO sighting to be formally investigated by the police.
As 61-year-old forestry worker Robert Taylor was walking his dog, he said he encountered what he described as a 30-foot object that pulsated from grey to translucent, hovering above the ground in front of him. Now I'm going to investigate the facts.
What happens next, if true, takes the term close encounter to a whole new level, because Bob Taylor didn't say he just saw a UFO. He was attacked by one.
As Bob watched the UFO levitate, he claims two spheres, each with rods protruding from them, appeared from beneath the craft and rolled towards him. These are the drawings made at the time by Bob of the UFO and the spheres.
Well, that was a short clip from The One Show, a magazine programme that goes out at 7 p.m. on most weekdays. Basically, it deals with topical affairs and also celebrities. So it's not a serious program, it's not a news source as such, but it deals with public interest, it's light-hearted, but they have brought in a person that has the credentials as a hard-hitting reporter, Matt Allwright. Matt Allwright usually does Road Traders and Watchdog and goes after people to find the truth. So they're trying to give a bit of gravitas to that. So look at that, but also look at it as a source. It doesn't mean because it's a light-hearted program that it's any weaker a source. It just means that you have to, from a scientific or an inquiring skeptical viewpoint, look at it as what it is, entertainment. I'm going to introduce you to William of Ockham, also known as William Ockham. He was born in 1285. He's a Franciscan philosopher, theologian, political writer, and late scholastic thinker, regarded as a founder of a form of normalism. But what skeptics know him as the person that came up with the idea of Occam's razor. Now, Occam's razor is something that we're going to use in this case. So what I want you to do is think for a while of the claim that's been made. So Robert claims that he's seen an alien craft that has landed in front of him and has attacked him, causing him to become unconscious. We're going to see more about that case later. So there seems to be the facts that are laid before us. But what we've got to do is look at the likelihood of that ever happening. So what we can do is, William proposed that when you've got a lot of hypotheses, or you've got competing ideas for a solution to a problem, then you look at the one that has the least amount of assumptions. And in his thinking, the simplest solution is usually the right one. So that's what we're going to use. So what you've got to say to yourself was, is it possible in this vast universe, or even this solar system, that there is sentient life that is at a stage that has the capability of space travel? Also, that alien force has landed on this earth before and is interested in interacting with human beings on the same sort of level that we have with each other. Now, think about it very, very carefully. There's a really good academic paper on the possibility of communicating with extraterrestrial life that I'll put in the comments at the end so that you can go and look at this yourself. But I want you to think clearly about the assumption that's being made here. Look how many species there are on the Earth. Can we communicate effectively with them? Can we converse with dolphins or horses or dogs or even the smallest of creatures? We can communicate in a way with our family pet so that it can come to us, but we cannot explain the concepts of the universe, UFOs to them. So, and they were all born on this planet. They actually evolved alongside of us, or before us, or after us in some cases, but we cannot communicate with them. So what are the likelihood of us being able to communicate with extraterrestrials, or even be able to perceive them? And in this case, there's no sort of communication involved, but it does sort of depict that they have similar things to us, and that they do things that are very human, like investigate, land in craft, and then have probes that come out and do some sort of investigation. It's all very human in concept at the moment. So at the moment, I would look at Occam's razor in this case as stating the likelihood is that the simplest solution is that there would be another very earthly cause. But I'm going to keep an open mind, like you should. So we're going to look at the case in more detail.
Malcolm Robinson interviewed Robert several times about the incident before Robert's death in 2007.
Balls start rolling towards him.
Yes.
Then what?
He projected these spike-like projections towards his person, i.e. his hips here on his trousers, pulled them very, very forcibly, slightly upwards and then towards this larger object. Now, Bob said at this point he smelled a horrible burning smell. Then he heard a swishing sound and then bang, he lost consciousness.
As Bob came back round after about 20 minutes, he was dazed and realised his trousers were ripped.
He went to his truck, which was further up the forestry ride here, and he tried to radio base to call attention to his boss that something weird had happened here. He couldn't speak, so he decided to stagger home. These are the actual trousers that Robert Taylor was wearing.
The trousers were sent for forensic analysis. Scientist Lester Nibb from Lothian and Borders Police concluded that both of the tears were consistent with the material having been pulled up while the trousers were being worn.
You reckon that this is the 1% chance that we've got that this is coming from outer space?
I firmly believe in the testimony of Robert Taylor, and I believe he saw what he saw.
So that was Malcolm Robinson, our first expert witness, so to speak, not to be disparaging. He is a author, a renowned author and a ufologist. He looks into paranormal, mysterious occurrences. He's written about the Loch Ness Monster. He's also written a complete book on this particular incident with Robert Taylor. So have a look at his Amazon listing here, and there's a few of the book titles that he's written. But that's not why I've put him forward. What I'm using him for here is to discuss the concept of confirmation bias. Now, confirmation bias is the tendency to interpret new evidence as a confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. So he already is a strong believer in the possibility of paranormal activity, extraterrestrial, or mysterious creatures such as the Loch Ness Monster. Now, to his credit, he did make a statement to the fact that this could be one of the few genuine cases of a UFO encounter. That's a quote from him. And basically what he's saying there is that he has found others that he's less convinced on. So he is, you could say, inquiring honestly. So what you've got to do when you're looking at evidence is to work out what they're doing. Are they looking to confirm their own bias? Because that's not how science works. Science works the other way around. So what you do in science is you come up with a hypothesis and you then try to refute that and try to falsify it. In other words, you try and disprove it. So you never truly say that that's 100% true. You're always looking for ways to disprove your actual theory that you've come up with. And only after rigorous testing and trials and also investigation, then can you have a high degree of confidence. So you've got to ask yourself, is that true in this case? Also, Malcolm Robertson alluded to the fact that Robert Taylor experienced a burning smell and also a strange swishing sound, and then that was followed by unconsciousness. He also alluded to the fact that forensic scientists looked at a pair of trousers that Robert Taylor was wearing, and in fact Malcolm Robertson showed them to Matt Allwright, and we were expected to be impressed by the tears in the trousers and how they were caused. But I'm going to leave that evidence to more expert witnesses later, who would have something more credible to say about that particular piece of evidence. But I want to finish off Malcolm's testimony by making reference to his last statement. I believe he saw what he saw, and that's alluding to the fact that he believes that Bob Taylor saw an extraterrestrial craft or something that he said he saw. He's not thinking he's a liar. Well, that may be true. He may not be lying, and we'll come on to how he could possibly believe that, even if it wasn't true later on. But what I'm going to say is that somebody's belief is not evidence. So it doesn't really matter what somebody believes, because I'll tell you this little story. If you found a new creature and it's really hairy, and then you got 100 people to state whether they believed that animal was a male or a female, okay? So they could do a vote on it. They could strongly believe it by its characteristics or whatever. But until there was an examination, okay, you wouldn't really know. And it doesn't matter if out of that 100 people, 80% of them believed that it was female, it could turn out to be male for true. So that can be demonstrated. So belief is not good evidence.
When he got home, Bob told his wife that he'd been attacked by a spaceship thing. She said he looked pale and exhausted and should go to the doctor. And then the doctor told him he should go to the police.
Former Detective Constable Ian Walk was one of the first police officers on the scene. His on-the-record testimony is among a file of police reports and photographs from the site of the incident.
I found Bob was an ordinary person. He was a churchgoer. He was a non-drinker. Not one person that I spoke to thought that Bob would have ever made this up.
So what did you find when you got there?
When I approached the scene, I saw 2 caterpillar tracks 10 feet long, 1 foot wide, and approximately 7 feet 8 inches apart. There were approximately 40 holes into the ground. They measured approximately 3.5 inches wide
and it went into the ground to a depth of about 4 inches. Now, these marks just appeared. They didn't come from anywhere and didn't go anywhere.
So having seen all this evidence and spoken to Bob and everybody else, what do you think happened?
I have no doubt that something landed there. What it was, I've no idea. 40 years on, it's still an unsolved crime.
Skeptics have suggested that a car crash or exhaust fumes may have caused Bob Taylor to become disorientated or confused. But in a separate report, another Lothian police officer records there was nothing to indicate that he'd been involved in an accident, and there was nothing on board which might give off fumes likely to cause hallucination.
So what do we make of this? We've got a former detective constable, Ian Walk, who stated that Bob Taylor was an ordinary person, a churchgoer, non-drinker, who wasn't the type of person that would make something like this up, according to all the people that he spoke to. Well, is that credible? Can we say that we must believe what Bob Taylor saw? Well, let me tell you that eyewitness testimony is not the strongest form of evidence, as you can see here on the screen. So basically, there was a study done at Stanford University, and what they found that according to the study, 358 people who had been convicted and sentenced to death in 1989 in America had been exonerated through DNA evidence. Of these, 71% had been convicted through eyewitness misidentification and had served an average of 14 years in prison before they were exonerated. So that was false identification by credible witnesses in some cases. Some of them may have lied, but a lot of people think they believe the evidence of their own eyes. We're going to look into other reasons why I think Bob Taylor may have been telling the truth in as far as he believes he saw what he saw, and other explanations for that in a minute. But what I want to get over to you is that eyewitness testimony is not evidence or strong evidence. It can be used to correlate other more concrete evidence, but in the case of a court of law nowadays, it would have to be backed up by some sort of forensic DNA. So, former Detective Constable Ian Walk at the time made some sketches of strange marks that he'd seen on the ground, and these on the screen are those marks, and the top one is a sort of representation of it in context, and down below is the actual sketch made at the time. So what do we think of those sketches? Well, first of all, there was somebody else present there. There was, in 1979, a UFO skeptic, Stuart Campbell, visited the scene of the incident with the police, and Campbell was convinced that this simple explanation could be found. So, being a skeptic, he was trying to employ Occam's razor. And he was also being scientific in his investigation, in the fact that he was looking to falsify what had been suggested had been seen. On his second visit to the site, he stated that he had observed some PVC pipes in an adjacent field. He discovered that the water authority had laid a cable ducting within 100 meters of this clearing. He came to the conclusion that the stacks of pipes may have been stored in the clearing and were responsible for the ground markings. Stuart Campbell, being a good skeptic, also looked for expert advice from Patricia Hannaford, a founder of the Edinburgh University UFO Society and a qualified physician. She advised Campbell on the medical aspects of the case. She suggested that Taylor's collapse was an isolated attack of a temporal lobe epilepsy, and the fit explains the objects and hallucinations. Symptoms such as Taylor's previous meningitis, his report of strong smells which nobody else could see, his headache, dry throat, paralyzed legs and a period of unconsciousness suggested the cause of the whole incident. And also epilepsy would have accounted for the flashes of light, according to Patricia too. Much later on, a local businessman, Philip Fenton, published in 2013 a report speculating that Taylor may have suffered a mini stroke and been exposed to harmful chemicals which left him confused and disoriented, and that the UFO he believes he saw could have been a saucer-shaped water tower nearby. So let's have a look at that water tower that he's alluding to. Apparently that is not far from the clearing where Mr. Taylor made the sighting. So you've got to look at that and say, okay, there's if you're going to put Occam's razor on that, then basically Mr. Taylor could have gone through in a state of hallucination and or been suffering from epilepsy or something, and wandered in before he collapsed. And he did say that it was blurred. He could have seen this through the trees and then collapsed, or even staggered back in some sort of state and collapsed and had a loss of memory for walking back. We don't know. That's speculation, but it also could be a case of confirmation bias. It could be that Phil Fenton wandered round the woods looking for a plausible explanation, and that's the opposite to scientific inquiry. He's trying to falsify, I believe. He's trying to find out other plausible explanations, just like Stuart Campbell and the PVC pipes. But what he's trying to do is probably retrofit it here. So it's always a good idea to keep a skeptical eye on this and weigh up the evidence. But you, and this is a crucial bit, you are the one that's got to judge this based on the validity and using tools like Occam's razor.
Most UFO stories begin and end with lights in the sky, and that's it. This one, well, we have a seemingly credible witness talking about contact on the ground. Extraordinary. Something happened in those woods 40 years ago, but what? We'll never know.
Oh. See, you are into a UFO.
Oh, massively. We've got such crazy science in this world. There's got to be stuff out there. No doubt about it.
So we have a summing up there by Matt Allwright. He sort of weighs up the evidence. He is doing his job, really. He's on a magazine programme. He's usually a more serious reporter, although he does inject a bit of humour into all his work. But he's come up with quite an honest appraisal there. We'll never know. Okay, but that is really a appeal to a mystery, which is a fallacy in the fact that, you know, the way he said it was, well, you know, we never know. But what an appeal to mystery is not evidence at all. But he's also right to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid of saying I don't know in the absence of any concrete evidence. People nowadays have to jump down on one side or the other. We're always asked to make a definitive statement of what we believe in. But if there's no credible evidence or the evidence isn't conclusive, do not be afraid of saying there is not enough evidence at this time to make a valid conclusion. But we'll judge for ourselves whether that's true in this case. Then we go over to Matt Baker in the studio with his really incredible statements. We've got such crazy science in this world. There has got to be stuff out there, no doubt about it. Well, there's another fallacy. That's called the argument from ignorance. Just because you don't understand something, you don't understand science, so it's crazy, so he put it. So there's got to be stuff out there. Science doesn't say that. It doesn't say just because we haven't found it yet, we've got to believe in everything that's possible or that we can imagine. What we've got to do is suspend belief until we actually have credible evidence. Now, sometimes in science, there is evidence that is unseen. For example, the Higgs boson. We didn't have the equipment to detect it until the Hadron Collider was built. But what happened was that they made a hypothesis and they work their way towards a theory that it could possibly exist because of its effects on other things. It's the same with seeing exoplanets around other galaxies and stars. We don't actually have the ability to see a planet that's in another galaxy, but we can look at the light drop. Then you can do a spectral analysis on the light composition and work out the likelihood of it being a planet. And even I believe they can tell what sort of atmosphere and what minerals and things are actually present on that planet. So that's quite a leap, basically, from something you can't see. But that doesn't mean that you can appeal to a mystery again and just say, because we don't know something, then we can suppose it could be true, or we don't know enough, so it's possible. That's not true either. So we're going to look at some other logical fallacies here. So I'm just going to turn this off and place this on. Now, what I want you to do is go and look for yourself at some of these fallacies. These are things that are used in debates and arguments, and I'll go through a couple of them, but I want you to pause the video and go and look some of these up. I'll go through some of my favourites. Straw man is to argue with somebody and basically argue. When you're arguing, you build up a position that you think they hold. You can build them into a villain, you can build them into a right-wing Nazi or whatever you want, but it doesn't represent the actual person. You're actually building a representation in order to knock it down. You're not actually talking to the reality of the person. The slippery slope fallacy is, we all know what a slide is. Basically, if this continues, we're all going to die. All right, so you're going from, if an event continues, we're all going to die, but one thing does not necessarily cause the other. It's just a sort of panic going on there. Also special pleading. I get this from a lot of people who profess to be clairvoyant, and then you say to them, can you or you can predict the future, can you sort of predict next month's lottery ticket or next week's lottery ticket? And they say, oh no, people with these powers cannot use them for their own gain. Well, that's special pleading because nature adapts itself to them, so they say. But actually, if a doctor prescribes you pills, they will work for the doctor as well. So it doesn't matter. If they're human, it should work for them. The one that I really like, though, is the, let's find it on here, the Texas sharpshooter. That's a really good one. Imagine, right, that you want to look like a really good marksman. So what you do is you fire a load of bullets at a barn door, go and find the tightest clump of bullets, and then go and stick your target on that, okay, and poke some holes in it, and it makes it look like you've actually hit the target. So that means looking at evidence, finding the best correlation to your argument, and then fitting your whole argument around that one. So that's a really a good fallacy. And there's lots of ad hominem is actually, you're losing the argument, so you attack the person's credibility, so you bring them down. I've actually seen that in a presentation by somebody just attacking a person's character until the audience laughs, and therefore they destroy the credibility of that person. It says nothing into what they believe or the evidence that they present. So what I say to you is, don't be impressed by what people say or the way they describe people's characters, the strength of their evidence. Just get through that noise, look out for these fallacies, and try and make up your own mind based on the hard facts and the evidence. In the absence of evidence, then basically you can't make a judgment one way or the other. But you can, on a weight of evidence, say an honest statement like this: it seems, by the evidence presented to me, that X is more likely to be the option I'm going for. And you could use Occam's razor and say, well, given all the evidence, the likelihood is that this simple solution is more plausible. So now we come to the crux of it. What do you think? Do you think that Bob Taylor had an encounter with an alien spacecraft and was attacked by them, and his story is true? Or do you believe that there is another explanation that's more earthly that could explain what happened to Bob Taylor? Either way, you've got to realise that he may not be lying. He may absolutely believe what he experienced. So I want you to come up with your own conclusion based on the evidence presented in this video. And if you want to, you could go further and go and look up the case yourself. Before you come to a conclusion, look out for fallacies in what people have presented as evidence. But also, what you've got to do is come to an evidence-based conclusion based on the credible evidence there and weigh it up. Weigh up the evidence from both sides. Use Occam's razor to actually look at the assumptions that have to be made for one particular hypothesis to be true over another, and then come to an evidence-based conclusion. But remember, it's all right to say, based on the evidence, this is what I think, or there's not enough evidence in order to come to a conclusion. So good luck with that, and thank you for watching this video.